Well, after 2 decades and 17 world championships, the only question remaining in the career of John Cena is how will it end? As we approach what is now being touted as the end of the end of the end of his final run here, we are heading towards a new announcement. The Last Time Is Now tournament. I record this on November 9th for Flurry Sports. If you like what you hear today, please like, subscribe, get in the comments. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong, what you would like to see different. But we are now at the precipice of this tournament starting tomorrow on the 10th. We have 4 dates left for John Cena's retirement run. And what we know is he has announced a tournament, and we have a few matches announced already coming in the coming Raws and SmackDowns in the future weeks, leading to his final match, Madison Square Garden, on December 13th for Saturday night's main event. Prior to that, he has one more date on Survivor Series, so he could likely, in the real world, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in my book in a second. In the real world, he likely has 2 matches left. I would assume he has a match in some form or fashion involving Brock Lesnar, which we'll talk about at Survivor Series, and then the winning tournament match against the winner of his The Last Time Is Now tournament in December at that Madison Square Garden show. Now, the question remains, what will WWE do with this tournament? What would I do with this tournament? I think John Cena's retirement run has been so fun to think about and book. And I did a different video if you'd like to go check that out, an article on how I thought his retirement was going to go over a year ago. But now as we hit here, I think it's fair to say folks have mixed emotions on how his run has gone so far. I will say that I've enjoyed it. I think, like most things with John Cena, I think if you can lean into the fact that he really cares about what he's doing, and one of the things I've always liked about John Cena is I'm right in the right age range. I think he was targeted to me, and I've grown up with him, so that's certainly a part of it. But also is I think he's one of the first all-time wrestlers who sees wrestling as both as what now the audience has come to see it, which is like full kayfabe all the time. Like what's in the ring is backstage. Like I think his match against AJ was the perfect representation of that. Of if your version of wrestling is I want a competitive, realistic match, you were probably left wanting in some ways there. But if you want the preparation and thought for a match to be almost center stage and what that match ends up looking like, almost the theatrics of it, then that's John Cena, dude. And I think that's what makes him so great. So I think it's fitting in a year that has seen this I won't sugarcoat, a ill-fitted heel turn that just didn't go the way that anyone involved wanted to. You can argue how much you hated it or how terrible it was historically, but no matter how you felt about different components of it, whether you're someone like me who loved the initial turn, can still see that in its own context, like the promos with it, and honestly just didn't wish we could just have a WrestleMania do-over, or you thought the whole thing was bad. I hope people will look back at this and are able to compartmentalize it, which leads us to what I'm booking today, which is specifically this last tournament. John Cena comes out, he announces we're doing a tournament to find out who my final opponent is. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what WWE has already done, because I don't want this video to age terribly right away. So I don't want to get into predictions or take what they've announced and maybe miss something or just immediately get wrong the direction they're going. So instead, I'm backtracking to the announcement itself, and my booking will a little bit include how I would set up where we are, but it starts with his final 4 appearances, kind of like we are in real time with his appearances left for November 10th and different pieces there. So I think that's going to be a big piece of what I talk about today. I also think it will be important when we kind of think about, or you think about as you're listening today, you're following along. Do you value WWE picking and choosing who's in the tournament on their own? Are you someone who really cares about how people qualify for this tournament? I don't need qualifying matches. I guess that'll be my thing. So I'm fine with the timeline of it. So I'm going to keep that the same. I'm basically going to say that following John Cena's match against AJ Styles, he decides to have this tournament and gets WWE to put it on. And I'm going to incorporate that into his last appearances. But this is a booking both of John Cena's final run in the tournament itself. So to set that up, that's what we're talking about today. And now I'll kind of get into it a little bit more. So first off, as I've mentioned a little bit, John Cena has 4 dates remaining. Those dates remaining are the 11-10 version of Raw coming from Boston, as close to home for John as you're going to get at an arena. So that in itself will be emotional. We'll kind of talk through what, I think there's 2 storylines. I think you have to, I think the tournament can't be John Cena's only focus here. I think he has to do 2 things. I think this tournament has to succeed, and John Cena's goodbye, actual leaving has to succeed. And I think it would be a mistake of WWE to only have John Cena's remaining time be focused on this tournament without doing a little bit of the thank you and farewell parts here too. And vice versa. A thing I'm worried about a little bit with the direction they're going in real life is I think it's a wasted opportunity if the tournament is just good matches for their biggest stars who don't have a clear direction right now. And or even without that last part, maybe they are folks who are in storylines, but because this tournament is announced, now they have to be in this. Both of those things, both folks in it who feel like this is the best use of their time and folks in it who are putting aside other things to be in this, don't help the feeling of the tournament. So we're going to balance that as we go. But he's appearing on November 10th, November 17th, 29th Survivor Series War Games, and then that Madison Square Garden Saturday Night Main Event show, which is his final match and final announced appearance. So again, that's what we're working with. So I have a version of this where it's fantasy booking. So it's like when we get into who's in this tournament, you'll see that I am probably stretching the limits of ability a little bit, but I wanted to think something that was fun and that as you watch it engage, you don't go, this isn't possible. So because of that, I haven't messed with the timeline much either. But one thing I will say is if I could, and I think that they still might do this, is now that we know the tournament is here, if you could and you were booking this, you would like John Cena to be in person on the last show before main event on the 12th. When we get to that show, I would explain further how I'd announce it, but for this purpose, just know that I am adding that. I would say how you could do it different if they decided not to, but know that I would add it, but I wouldn't announce it ahead of time. I would leave the announced dates as are, and then when we kind of get to it, I think you can really play around, have a little fun with the fact that there is one more date that's not announced. And I just think with this remaining schedule now that this tournament is in here, I don't know, if you think of those dates as the 2 Raws, he's got a lot to say, and then having a match, supposedly, hopefully on both of those nights, I think would be the plan. Having one more time where he can actually focus on Saturday Night Main Event build up in person, and like that would be his last appearance. Like so far, no announced appearance after Saturday Night Main Event to wave or say bye or anything. That's just it. So I would add that date, and that's a little bit why. So now you know the dates. That's what we're working with in terms of when John Cena himself is going to be here. Now, a little bit about the tournament. And like I said, I think some of this is going to, a lot of this actually is going to play out exactly like real life, which I like. I like the general idea of this tournament. I think it's cool. I would stick with a 16-man tournament, single elimination. So you're out, you're out. I would do a little more. They've kind of touched on this. John Cena did in his initial promo. I would, I guess retconning a little bit of his initial announcement. And I think what he can say on 11-10 a little bit, I would be more specific that he, in making this tournament and advocating for it, has worked with the general managers of WWE's 3 brands to select 8 main roster wrestlers from both Raw and SmackDown. A clean break between the 2 doesn't flow right for the tournament, doesn't give us the best options in it, honestly. So just 8 main roster wrestlers, and then 4 wrestlers from NXT. He put I think a decent emphasis on building up new folks and getting big names in there. I think what we're working with, and I'll get to that in who we select in a little bit, and kind of tying into that, John Cena's first of these last promos, in his first appearance of these last 4 on the 10th. But I would say that NXT being involved, you want to build up folks from everywhere, but building up folks from NXT and kind of tying that into John Cena's trail all the way from WWE development, I think is cool. And I think I would have put an emphasis somewhere in the build that John Cena has handpicked each person in the tournament. And NXT specifically, he's picking folks that remind him of him, that need that stamp in the door, that got the same opportunities he got, and he wants to give that them there. I want every person in this tournament to feel bigger after than before. And I think NXT, that's really important to, even if they lose, it's worth having more NXT guys in there. So I'd have 4 from there and 4 wild cards from outside the company. I think now the TNA is somewhat under the WWE umbrella. I don't think there's any. I'm only having, is that true, 1 TNA guy of my 4 in that mix be from outside the company. But as we get to that, I think some are more outrageous than others, but I think they could do this even without getting as outrageous. I'm going to use, spoilers, some of the big names folks are hoping to see in this tournament just from recent rumors and stuff. But even if you just did, I know it gets dangerous because you don't want folks to think these big names are coming. But if they did 4 wild cards from outside the company, they were a little more specific of like TNA and former WWE stars, free agents. There's so many guys I didn't use. Like I was like, could you get RVD in this tournament? Jeff Hardy's in TNA right now. I'm not using Matt Cardona. Like there's so many names attached that I think they could just get. And it's like, that's really fun. So I think there's folks that could be in this tournament from outside to just make it more fun in that way. So that's a little bit more about who's going to be in it. And then the specific layout that I want folks to know is this kind of layout. As I get into it and start talking, I just want you to be able to visualize what each of these weeks look like. I don't know if WWE is going to spell it out this much, but I will. And I don't want to reveal a bracket here because I think there should be some surprise with who's in it, but I would at least reveal the layout of the bracket, which is this is going to lead up all the way until that Saturday night main event last match. And then kind of, I think what WWE is doing without announcing it, this form laid out, is the week of 11/10 in the week of the 17th of November, I would do the round of 16. So that is going to be those first 8 matches. I would do 2 matches on both Raw and SmackDown, both of those weeks, to get to our quarterfinals, that Elite 8, I guess you could say, for March Madness fans after that. So I think that gives us plenty of time to build. I don't think you have to announce your whole bracket ahead of time. In fact, I think you can let each episode build itself. And as we get into the flow of when I would have folks show up and what those matches would be, I think it sets up nicely so that all of these become must watch and you have to tune in to see who's going to be there. And because of that, don't be surprised if we save some of the big names for the start and specific end of this round of 16 to get folks hooked right away and then to keep them hooked to stay in. And then that week of 11/24, that's the quarterfinal. So again, I would do you get to the Elite 8, so you're doing 4 matches. So I would again do 2 on SmackDown, 2 on Raw. I know we're having NXT guys in this. I wouldn't have any of these matches on NXT. I think you can have the guys from NXT do other things on that show for sure. They should be talking about this. This should be their focus, and they should put over the NXT guys absolutely on that show, but I wouldn't have the matches themselves there. And then I think the week of 12/1, that's coming right off of Survivor Series. So Survivor Series itself, I'd have some of these guys doing things. I won't have any of the tournament on the show. I think they can be there, be involved different ways. And I'll talk about that when we get there. But I think that week you slow it down a bit since you'll have 4 guys left. You have 2 matches, 1 on Raw, 1 on SmackDown. You have the final match, 12/8 on Raw. Give it a lot of build, especially I wanted to get out there that like they're again a thing of a struggle of their own making. But for me, the fun as you think about this is I found it fun to give myself some of the creative and logistical hangups WWE would have to be thinking through, which is as listed, you have 2 weeks without Cena, the final 2 weeks of the tournament. He's at Survivor Series, but beyond that, like, and assumingly doing something non-tournament related at Survivor Series. So he's doing that. How do you get 2 weeks out of this that doesn't necessarily have any in-person John Cena at all at the very least? I'm going to get into how I would do that. But as you think of how you would do it, one thing I went to is that, well, I want those big matches to feel even bigger. So I don't think you have to squeeze them all in and give them more promo time when those promos aren't going to have Cena there, most likely. And again, I'm going to add one date just to get him in for one promo in person with the winner. So to do that, I would have a final on December 8th Raw. That's the final of the tournament. That means that 12-12 SmackDown is just the winner given a promo, having Cena come in, and then we build up for that match on the 13th. So not a huge build between win and that last match. But if Cena's not going to be in there in person for that build anyway, I think we can use the tournament to build up the winner, and then the winner will have one night in SmackDown to really, sink in one-on-one with Cena, which I think is okay. I think Cena's got enough other things to say to not necessarily do promo battles with each of these 16 guys. I don't know if that's the best use of that time. So that's the build of the tournament a little bit. Hopefully that helps you follow along as we get into what comes next. And with that said, how I'm going to format the rest of this video so you can follow along is I'm going to have the dates of the specific episodes of Raw and SmackDown and Survivor Series and Saturday Night Main Event up here so you can follow along there. But if you need to pause the video and go back and forth, know that I have these layout pieces here, and then a little bit later I'm going to do a check-in on where the tournament's at too so you can follow along. So that said, we start where WWE is going to start, which is November 10th. John Cena returns to Boston one last time as part of WWE to kickstart the tournament. I assume he's going to open the show, and that would be how I book it as well. Cena comes out, just soaks it in, and as we head to that final Raw in Boston, so the second to last Raw overall, I think a big focus for John Cena in person here is I think this tournament provides two key opportunities for WWE and how I would book it. And I hope they make the most of these two, which is the one that I think everybody's talking about, which is, putting people over. I think it's easy to think of putting someone over in that last match. But I think the reason John's doing it, and he would say this in this promo that I'm not going to necessarily cut verbatim, but something I think he can touch on is it occurred to him as he's having these last matches and handpicking AJ and giving tribute to all the guys he's wrestled with, that his biggest regret is going to be all the people he couldn't wrestle. And if he can't wrestle everyone, how does he make them a part of his final farewell? He incorporates them in matches. He lists them by name. I would have him list folks that he couldn't include in this tournament here. Maybe guys like Batista or JBL. Yeah, I don't feel personally great about JBL being the second name I came up with there. Maybe he gave a shout out to Baron Corbin in the past promo. I think that's a great example of folks he knows he can't include. And so he wants to include these folks in this tournament is how he's going to do that. To put them over, I think he can talk again about how he has worked to pick all these folks. He has made this tournament up of two types of people that he would feel regret. And I think he could almost word it that way. Like, this is in some ways a tournament of opportunity. But with opportunity comes regret. And he's like, I've picked 16 people I would regret not having in my last match, knowing I can only have one of them. And I think that's a cool premise of all of these are last matches he wants, and he can't pick 16 last matches. He has to pick one. So that is a combination of folks that he has faced before he would regret not getting to see again, and newer faces or faces from a generation at the very least he didn't overlap with that he would regret not getting to be in the ring with at least once. So it's a mix of folks, and I think he can say that of like, this tournament is a one final thank you to all the folks that helped make him, and to a thank you to all the folks that maybe he inspired in some way or one more push as they go. And I think that sets up perfectly the type of people in this tournament. They're connected to John in some way, whether that is past or future. And I think that will be important for commentary to get across throughout of they're not in the tournament just because, I'm going to pick on a guy, and I don't mean to do this, but like someone WWE is announced in real life in the tournament is Damian Priest. And I think I love Damian Priest. So it's like, this sucks to use him as a comparison. But right now, at the very least, I don't know why he's in this tournament besides he's like in the main event scene. you know? But it's not just the main event scene who's in this tournament because Cody's not in this tournament. Uh, I don't know if Braun Breaker's going to be in this tournament. So, but Roman's not in this tournament. It's an example of I just don't know why the people in the tournament are in the tournament. I don't know if they've laid that out as good as I would like in my fantasy booking. But two, like if Damien's going to be in it, I want to hear why John wants him in the tournament. And right now I can't do that math on my own. I think there's some guys that's easier to do than others. But I think if the tournament's a mix of guys who have good reasons and guys who don't, A, it makes it more predictable, and B, there's some missed opportunities there. So John will touch on that. I think also that's one, putting people over, and that's going to be a big thing I talk about. The second opportunity WWE has with this is I think it's foolish that people maybe think they could have nailed his last run no matter what they did fully. I think it's very fair. Listen, I'm doing a fantasy booking video on something that hasn't happened yet. I think it's very fair to think they could do it better. But I think for sure something that I hope people are able to do in hindsight is this is WWE's chance to separate out something from the rest of the run. And if they do that, the tournament will live on its own because that's his actual goodbye. Like they won't think of the whole last year. They'll think of this last tournament and last match. I think that's smart depending on your perception of the last year. But I also think it's smart because it encourages you to compartmentalize all of it. One thing I've been frustrated about is I think John Cena's Rumble appearance and Elimination Chamber appearance, that was so good. Why I'm so frustrated about his WrestleMania match is because, in my opinion, it wasted such a good storyline, which is they told a perfect John Cena so desperate, and of course he would be, to be in that spot. He cashes in a favor, which he's never done. He's heelish even in the Elimination Chamber match, turns heel. And to me felt justified. Like I got it. I understood the character motivations and unfortunately it didn't pay off. But I think if you give us a great last component, it's what you end on. So in the literal sense, I think we'll be more forgiving and more favorable of his entire last run. But also, listen, I just my perception of John Cena as a performer and different things from I've heard and what I've seen even during this last run, he wants to do a million good things. The heel turn was one of them, but AJ's match was another one. He wants to do something with Randy. He did that. He wanted to, do something with Cody and The Rock and CM Punk. There were a million things he had to do, and I think Cena's the type of guy who wants to do all of them. And the tournament's the best way to do that. So it puts people over, and John can come out in this last promo. I think he thanks folks. I think this would be important for this tournament, especially where I see the final going, is John Cena is both a self-made story of like this guy who WWE will sell him as like he came from nowhere, West Newbury, Massachusetts, which I think is funny because I don't know if that's the middle of nowhere, but that's how they sell it, and built himself up with ruthless aggression, hard work. I feel like they've never said pull himself up by his bootstraps, but it's very implied. And at the same time, talk about all the people and matches that made him what he is. And this is his chance to regret as little as possible, but if he was always going to teach folks to not give up hustle, loyalty, and respect, I think John Cena is a career of virtues, and I think he will take this moment to thank the people who put those virtues into him. I would have his dad there in different pieces, and as much as he can, this one last time tournament, like I said, is a tournament of regrets and a tournament of one last chance. Even though he hasn't done it this whole last year, this would be something I'd have him say in the promo. I haven't been my best self this whole last year, but if I could think of what I would tell one of my fans or some of the people who come up to me that I get to talk to because of this opportunity, I would tell them that if we stopped when we made a wrong turn, we never get where we're going. And this tournament is my chance to end exactly the way I want with the people I want. And I've helped pick this. So I think you set it up that way. You lay out the tournament, and then we get into the matches. So that's John Cena's first of his last 4 promos. I think it's every time he's on screen, it's going to be so emotional. And I think you ride that into this tournament. I think it starts by like, we would know who's in those first matches. And in this Raw, we would already have the matches announced. I would have the matches for this particular Raw be Javon Evans versus Carmelo Hayes would have been announced ahead of time, and LA Knight versus a mystery opponent, which we do have in real life. I'm excited about. I think there's a chance it is what I'm predicting here, which is cool. I would do Javon Evans and Carmelo Hayes as a first match in the actual tournament. I think John would announce that here, and they won't necessarily come out to John, but he would promote that, because I think that's what this tournament's got to be, is like 2 guys that WWE is clearly stamped in different moments in different ways. It's like, you could be a dude. Javon Evans is kind of the next guy of the moment. He had a huge match recently, toed in his entire recent run on NXT. Very highly compelling in my opinion, and you can tell WWE thinks the world of him. Carmelo Hayes, this tournament, I'll say stretch is a rehabilitation project. I think he's a dude, and I think John can look and be like, I didn't make it right away. Carmelo's someone who did that. And he would promote both of these guys, and I just think that match could be a show stealer, and that's what you want this tournament to open with. 2 guys that I think are very sensible picks for this type of tournament too. So yeah, you want your first match to be like, oh, that's what this whole thing's going to be, and they're perfect, and the future's now, and they're in it. Second match, I think we would know it's LA Knight mystery opponent. I would have John Cena's promo end with LA Knight coming out. I think LA Knight gets a big promo here. He's been in weird states, but in this fantasy booking, like, I think he can connect himself to John a little bit. And I think John ends this moment with saying, I'm very excited for you to meet your opponent. And the only thing I would say is that if you're so sure this is your destiny, you have to be ready for the curveballs life throws at you. And he walks out a little, he knows, but LA Knight doesn't know who his opponent is. So some wrinkles there. So we get the first match. I would have Carmelo Hayes defeat Javon Evans. And I know I can't put this on screen, but just know that I would have the brackets broken up into bracket A, B, C, and D. So the first match of bracket A would be Carmelo Hayes versus Javon Evans. We know that they will come back in 2 weeks for their next match. I would have this go back and forth. I would have Carmelo Hayes win. I think a little more experience, and him and the Miz are broken up. Miz would be known to be in this tournament. I think there's a little more drive in that sense, where Javon Evans is trying to just standard prove he belongs in this crowd and belongs with that last match with John. I think there's just a little more sting for Carmelo. So that'd be the edge there. And I would set the stage that Carmelo Hayes is like almost unlocking something. I think Javon Evans for him maybe takes him back to a hungrier place in NXT. Some Rocky 3 energy, WWE loves the Rocky metaphor. So maybe he's Clubber Lang, I don't know. But I like Rocky too, I guess, but not everything's Rocky. So that's the vibe. And then last match I would have of the night, LA Knight comes out. We're in it, folks. First of the mystery opponents. I would have it be Chris Jericho. I think this is likely. Reports are that he does not have a firm deal with AEW. So unlike some of the other guys in this tournament for rumors and mystery opponents, the reason I have Jericho here is because he doesn't need to win. You could absolutely, but I think you announce that he's re-signed to WWE and in for a stint, and suddenly who knows what's going to happen, because he wouldn't have to beat LA Knight if you announced he was signed and he comes down to the ring. But you could, and I will hear, I'm going to have him come back. LA Knight can use an excuse of surprise. I would, to get it out of the way, set this up for a feud between the two, which I think is electric. I think they have a lot of commonalities, and I think Jericho can kind of set up one firm push for Knight to the top and gives him a big thing to do that makes sense. But it's the first of many, like, this tournament is going to push people. Knight can lose here and still have a thing with Jericho. Jericho is back, big win. this tournament is now off to the races because it just ended with Chris Jericho returning on the first night of it. So that would be this first Raw. I would then head to the first SmackDown, a little less pomp and circumstance and things to talk about without Cena being there in person, but they would recap what happened on Raw. And then that first night on SmackDown, I think it's really important that we establish that no one knows what's going to happen. The guys from NXT have come in impressed, but who knows what's going on next. I think you kind of start off here. Now we're on to block C and block D. Like, we really don't know. And I think the managers at this point would be like, people are just starving to be in this tournament. And I think they're kind of throughout going to be impacted on what John Cena is saying and referencing that. So I think you can tell a cohesive story of what John Cena is doing in this tournament without them always being on screen at the same time. So that said, the matches I would announce tonight is first, I would have Drew McIntyre at the start of the show say that he's in the match tonight. He's against a mystery opponent, and after he's supposed to be later in the show, but after Monday, he doesn't want to wait. He doesn't want to be surprised. He wants to take his opponent by surprise. And he said, no matter who is out to challenge me, I want them to know that their fate is sealed against the chosen one, Drew McIntyre. And I think he can tie that old chosen one mystique into why he would want to be John Cena's last opponent. Like, they've been together, but he could say John Cena's gotten every opportunity. You know, his current character is he's screwed, even though he's not. So he could tie that in of where's been my fair shake, where's my opportunities. And I think you could tie it into suspension, different pieces now, almost forcing himself into this tournament. I think he's demanding to be in. He almost, kind of steals the show. I think then we get a cut to Wade Barrett, who stands and he says, Drew, friend, because he's been kind of the voice of reason to Drew. He goes, he's like, I've got good news. I just got word from Nick Aldis. And he got a call from John Cena. You're in the tournament. You're in, and your match is going to be next. And then hopefully you see where this is going. I've got some bad news. And I think we cut bad news. Barrett music hits. Let's do it, man. This is, I think, a really fun one. I want Wade in the tournament. I think he doesn't have to face Cena. Again, the whole point is he can't face all 16 of these guys. I think every match is sold on. Hopefully you feel like everyone in the match could keep going. And I think Wade being in this tournament is so fun. What a way to get him in there. And even though I'll say right here, going to lose to Drew, he gets to fight Drew. And what a cool way to do it. Because of course, Wade and the Nexus you can tie in should be a part of this tournament in a cool way. I think it refocuses Drew just from this story of like, he's surprised. I would think and hope these two would have a blast and could have a really hard-hitting good match. And I think it lays Drew's groundwork coming out of this of like, okay, you're in this tournament, but like, who the hell knows what's going to happen? Maybe you do a little thing with him and Wade coming out of this, but it's one more slightly less big, but still fun introduction into this tournament. So you have that. And then the match I think you'd really advertise, you could even advertise it on the Raw beforehand, is Rusev versus Miles Bourne from NXT. I think there's a world where you could have Miles win this tournament. I will say here that I'm not having him beat Rusev. And I really went back and forth on that. I like Rusev more in the rest of the tournament. And I think there's only so many guys you can give the Cinderella performance to that isn't going to win before you have too many Cinderellas, just like real life March Madness. So for me, Miles Bourne is one I couldn't give as big a push to as I wanted, but I think you could easily sell, and I would have like online vignettes of every guy as they come down for their match, of why they're here, and like a little bit about them actually would be what I'd have in this first round. And for Miles, I think there's maybe the clearest similarities to me of like ruthless aggression, John Cena coming down and slapping Kurt Angle. I think if you watch NXT, Miles Bourne has been cutting a lot of promos, and I think really good work on whether related to his speech impediment or just general things people thought of him throughout his life. Just someone who has had to prove himself at every step, and to me is like a weird like echo of that same mantra that they always tell us now in promos John Cena was all about, even though that first run didn't work as much as those promos would like us to think. But the point is, in this run, Miles Bourne's a great one to have in there. I think him going against Rusev, pushing him to the edge. Rusev, I think, should and will be seen as a favorite in this tournament in real life. And I think in this one, because I know who he's going to face next, I don't know if he'll be seen as a favorite in that way, but should be someone that everyone's like, yeah, he could be John Cena's last opponent. Him and John Cena have a history. He beat John Cena in some big matches at WrestleMania and his US title challenge. So I think that's really fun. I think him versus Miles Bourne is cool because I want Miles against someone bigger and intimidating who will put him over in a loss. And I think Rusev can do the whole, whoa, you almost got me thing really good. It's still win and move us on. So that's at SmackDown. And I think I want a mix of moments and matches. And I think the match of this night is the second one. So I think, not that I don't think Drew and Wade can have a good match, but who knows with Wade, So I think that's cool. I think we advertise for Raw on this. And again, we're continuing to push it. John Cena will be back. He's going to have comments on it on the tournament so far. I think we also announced here that John Cena is going to announce his plans for Survivor Series on Raw. So we get that tease as well as the tournament continuing. And on Raw, I would announce again, in a continued theme, all of these have one mystery opponent. It's Miz versus a mystery opponent on Raw, and then Dominic Mysterio versus Charlie Dempsey. And that's where we head next. So now on Raw, we get to see John Cena's final promo on Raw ever. I think he can talk through some of his most famous Raw moments, all the titles he won, different pieces. I would have him specifically mention interrupting a live sex celebration because it teases someone in this tournament, baby, and we're getting there. So we tease that up. I would have the focus of this second promo be putting over what happened last week. And he can kind of talk about some of the folks we've already seen in the tournament. And I think I'd have him give a pretty big tease that he's like, only one person reached out to ask to be in this tournament specifically. And even though we haven't always seen eye to eye, it's the one person I couldn't say no to. And I would have felt the worst not having the tournament, and he will be in action on Friday. And I think that's our big tease to the reveal. Everyone's wondering if he's going to be in this tournament. And so I think that's a cool way to set that up. And then he would turn his attention back to tonight, and he's like, I have two moments of business. I need everyone in the tournament left to step up their game. And he's like, and he would put over how good everyone's been in it so far. But if you don't want this last time is now tournament to be your last time at a big shot, you've got to make the most of it. So put over the folks tonight. And then I have to make the most of my last time, and I have unfinished business. That business is Brock Lesnar. And I think, as much as I don't love it, I just don't. That's actually the one unresolved thing that I'm like, he can't just have one like whooping from Brock Lesnar. I don't know if I would have done it at all, but it's happened, right? And he's been messed with since then by Lesnar a little bit. They got to wrap that up. So in real life, I feel like there might be going towards a War Games match. God, Cena's got so much stuff to do. I just don't know if I want him involved in that. I get the appeal because it'd probably be awesome and you get him with more people. But for this booking, I'm just putting him in a street fight with Brock. A throwback to some of their hard-hitting encounters. And I think he will sell. It's only fair if the people in this tournament are going to put themselves through hell. I'll do the same. And that way, when I and the winner get to Saturday's night main event, we'll both know the lengths we're willing to go to when we look each other in the eyes that last time for me. And I think you really set up that this is like a grueling tournament process, which I think is a cool tie-in to someone's tournament arc in general. That person being Dominic Mysterio. I'm having him go against Charlie Dempsey because I think there could be a cute little video package, maybe even an interview earlier tonight. I would have Charlie Dempsey mention that his dad is William Regal. If I were him, that'd be my last name. I'd talk about it all the time. I'd have him behind me. I think he works for the company. I would have him just around me more often. It's a weird thing WWE does where it's like I have a famous dad that would make you care about me more, but you got to Google that. I put it on my pants. I'd put it on my tights so everyone has to read I'm Will's son. But I would have Charlie make that here. Then you have a very easy story of two, you know, lineal legends in William Regal and Ray's son, or maybe Dominic. I think a funny promo bit would be, your dad and I have a lot of history together. Eddie and William Regal really went at it. Sorry, they keep calling him Will. No one's ever called him Will. But I think that's funny. But obviously the Ray connections too. And then I think they have a really good technical match, and we're planting the seeds here. I would have Dom win. I would plant the seed in this match that this tournament is going to kick the shit out of Dom. He finds himself with 2 titles coming in this tournament. I would keep the build up with Ray. I would say that, like, Dom's not turning anything down. Like, Dom is about to face the consequences of, and some of the promos, I guess, of he sincerely thinks he's the best in the world. He thinks he's the best luchador ever. So I think the heel part of that is that it's not true, but a thing we're going to lean into in this tournament is, or is it? Like, he's not saying it because he knows it's not true. He's saying it because he's a little delusional, but he wants it to be true. So I think in this one, it's a technical blowout. I would have Judgment Day get involved and Dom have a little question in his mind if he would have won the technical bout against Charlie Dempsey, Charlie Regal, or not. But I think that's a cool time to set up the story of, okay, he won round 1 against a rookie with a lot to prove, but with help. And I think that sets up, because I would have this tournament coincide a build with him for a title match, for maybe both or at least one of his titles against Ray at Survivor Series, and those have to happen at the same time. So if he wants this, and he does, because John Cena invited him in, and he thinks he's going to get all the respect that he feels he deserves if he can be the one to retire John Cena. Well, then he's got to do it all at once. So that's the start there. That second match then is surprise mystery guest versus Miz. I would have this as a part of the show, so we're not. Again, we've set up that the big guest remaining is on SmackDown, which I like. So we know that it's not going to be certain R-rated superstar here, and so instead it's Miz. And I'd have it be Nick Nemeth. This is another cool thing we can do with the setup of this tournament. TNA being in there. Dolph Ziggler comes back. Let's have it be Dolph for this. TNA's cool. Can we call him Dolph? Hit the music. Out he comes. Miz and Dolph have a lot of history. You tell that, but only one can keep going. And you sell the tale that the Miz will do anything to win. I think they have a really good match. Miz cheats as crazy as can be. He's just delusional about his connection to John Cena and what he's got to do. He beats Nick Nemeth. He'll face Carmelo Hayes next week. Dominic next week, because the bracket that he is in is going to go on, and he's going to face Chris Jericho. So you get to set those pieces up there after this Raw. And that, again, Dom versus Chris Jericho really sets up what a path Dom has in front of him to remain in this tournament. So then we head to SmackDown. I won't gild the lily anymore. Edge is going to be on the show. Listen, will this happen in real life? Boy, I don't know. I'll state the obvious, which everyone has already stated. If Edge was going to, it's just been ominous how he suddenly took he acknowledged on air he was taking a break from AEW, stepping back, leaves the door cracked open for him to maybe appear here. The obvious con of that is it's a tournament. So not only does Edge have to appear, if he's going to participate in the tournament, he'd have to, be in 5 WWE matches while still being an AEW superstar. That's a lot. Here's what I'll say. We got to get over that this couldn't happen. I would love to live in a world where this could. And I hope everyone's on the same page of that, of like, yes, logistically hard. I get why both companies would be wary of this, but come on, do it, man. And here's why I say that. Give Edge a great run. You could decide if he's in it, does he have to win it? Now, that's tough for WWE to have an AEW guy win it. But can he have a great run and maybe at least not beat Cena or not make the final? I'll tell you what I'm going to do in a bit. I think there's a way to do that. I sincerely think it makes everybody look good. I think it borderline makes AEW look better that they let him come over here and do it. And as long as WWE treats Edge well and puts someone else over, it's a good look for them to listen. Wrestling companies have done things like this with excursions. I know that's different levels. Professional soccer, football, sorry, and different pieces do that with transfers and loans of guys. This isn't unheard of in the world of sports, and I know it's unlikely, but I just want to get out the way of, like, I think if we talk about things like this like they're impossible, it doesn't maybe put some of the fun pressure on companies of like, yeah, it is, do it, dude. Like, Forbidden Door happened because of how much money that was going to make AEW and New Japan. Even though one of those companies isn't WWE, neither of them like seeing their guys lose on other companies' soil either. So I think it's cool. It's a one-time thing. Jericho's separate because he would have a deal with WWE. So I think this would be cool. I'd have Edge on the show. He'd be the mystery guest. I think I would have the show close with it. I think you announce it, it'd be pretty obvious, but it's a trade-off. Do you open with it and everyone goes crazy right away? Because actually it changed my mind on the fly. I'm having Edge versus Sheamus open the show. That is who Edge, and that would be the other thing I do. Edge gets to be in this tournament. It's obviously an act of goodwill. I'm going to have him go against guys that he'd realistically want to go against. He picked Sheamus to be his last match in WWE. That story tells itself. He comes back, beats Sheamus again. And Sheamus gets to be a part of this tournament. He'll have a great match. It makes sense why he'd be in it. And continues to put over a good buddy in Edge, who makes his triumphant return, now obviously the front runner in this tournament. The second match coming off of that, Shinsuke Nakamura I would have in it. He'd be announced, and I'd have him go against, for the love of God, WWE, please have him in this tournament, and whether you do it different than me, make a star out of him. I don't know how you screw up Obafemi, but don't do it. You have Nakamura versus Obafemi, and I would have Oba murk people in this tournament. Have him take stuff, like, don't squash Nakamura, but Oba should crush people. And I think you put him over, the ruler of NXT, just he's here. I would have this be his call up, and I would have him go wild. I just think he should be an unstoppable force, and he has deemed this tournament to be worthy of his spotlight. And I think almost Oba's the only one who the tournament is not about John Cena. And I think that's a cool character trait, is like, even all the other egotistical folks in this tournament, they're thinking about what this tournament does for them. And I think Oba is like, I'm the star, dude. Like, all these folks get to be in the ring with Oba. I think that's cool. I think it's a fun wrinkle. I think coming off of Edge debuting and obviously be a big star, how do you accompany that? Well, here's a stamp on a new dude who is the future, man. So I think that's fun. That brings us through our round of 16. And now for a little refresh there, I've got, it didn't show up, but I'll talk you through it anyway. So apologies that this visual isn't popping up for you, but talking you through what has happened so far after that round of 16. Again, Block A would have been Chris Jericho and Dominic Mysterio. They're going to face off on the next Raw. LA Knight and Charlie Dempsey were in that block, but were defeated. Carmelo Hayes and The Miz tell a story in their storyline they've got set up. They beat Javon Evans and Nick Nemeth, Dolph Ziggler, respectively. Block C, you've got, and I didn't really lay this out, which is why I want to go back to it. I'd have Edge and Rusev is the matchup next for Edge. And Drew McIntyre and Oba, which I just need in my blood. So that's where we're at. And Wade and Shinsuke were the last two of that block D. So now you have the brackets. So you see that it's Chris Jericho versus Dominic Mysterio and Carmelo and Hayes versus The Miz on Raw. The winners of that face each other following Survivor Series on Raw. And then I'd have Edge versus Rusev and Drew versus Oba. The winners of those face each other on the last SmackDown. And that would be that semifinal. So those are the Elite Eight, the remaining in the bracket, and we go from there. Now we're in a little stretch without Cena's presence, right? So this tournament is now building themselves because of that. When we get to this Raw, I would now have at this point a promo from So now we're in the 8. I would have a promo from Cena talking about why he's picked each of the 8 guys remaining to be a part of this tournament. You can do beforehand because you didn't want to give away all the surprises. I think here you firmly put over everyone in the tournament through the words of John Cena in a fun way while he's not on TV. So it's going to happen on Raw and SmackDown. I'm not going to say it again, but know that I would have that. John Cena kind of putting the stamp on all of these guys and why they're here before they come down for their matches. And since there's still 8 left, I think you can do some promos, but I would really let the initial work of round 1 and Cena here do Cena's like recorded promos, do the heavy lifting of like these guys left. I think that's a fun way to do it while still giving Cena. I'd have Lesnar on one of these shows put over the Cena match. And Cena's last focus was on Survivor Series. You can have the videos put over why these guys are in the tournament without Cena needing to be there, and then still can do a Cena promo package for Brock Lesnar too, mostly with Brock and Heyman doing the heavy lifting. I think that still works. It makes sense. Obviously, doing those two things, you're going to have some weird overlap of what's John's priority. I think you can tell that story. But I think you got to do both. And so I would. And that leads us to Raw. And like I said, I think you've got 2 fun matches here. I think the one most folks will be more talking about is Dom and Chris Jericho. I would have the Cena promo, and then I would have those 2 kind of do a back and forth on each other in like a backstage interview. I think Jericho, this would be his first promo back. I think it's he'd kind of put down LA Knight a little bit from their match last week. I think he would cut a promo. Him and Dom is really fun, and I think Dom would be starting to realize the hassle of this. He's reflecting a little bit that he needed help last week, and now he's got Chris Jericho. And on Saturday, he's got Ray in the title match, and it's all starting to soak up. I would, when Dom is giving a promo, have Ray interrupt him so we still get him promoting Saturday. And I would have Ray's comments really focus on all those great luchadors you mentioned. Never, even if they cheated, lied, and stealed, and the obvious references to Eddie, no one had to wonder if they had it, And does anyone know that for Dom yet? Or is the help what makes you the star, not the other way around where the star cheats because he can and because it's smart? So I think you delineate that, and that sets up that big match. But you got to give a lot of time here to Miz and Carmelo. They've told a really good story. I am going to tie this back for the sickos to the Cruiserweight Classic of I think the Miz's run should be reflective of Brian Kendrick, of in that tournament, Brian Kendrick was the older established guy who just wasn't quite at the same physical capacity as everybody else. I think the Miz has almost more story with Cena than everybody else in this tournament in the way that he can spin it and how desperate he is, and knowing, and I think he can sell this with Carmelo here, a little vulnerability of, I know you've got it. That's why I've cut you off at every turn so you don't take my spotlight from me, because I have to cut you off. And Carmelo, I think, again, this tournament is him unleashing himself. I think this is a big monkey he has to get off his back as the Miz. And I would use this match as Miz does everything. It doesn't matter. And I'd have Carmelo look like an animal here. Just the dude. And he should look that way. I'd have him no-sell some stuff at the right moments. Just time is not on the Miz's side. And I think you could have the final moment be the Carmelo reverses a trick that Miz tries to pull on him, gets the big win, and sells not only is he better, but he's learned from the Miz. And on we go. And Miz is crushed, but he maybe respects Melo a little bit, which will tie into next week. And then we've got the Miz losing, but putting over Melo, which I think makes sense. The Miz would be someone who I'm sure Cena would love to have a last match with, but I just think there's better options here. And I would have Dominic beat Chris Jericho. I hope it's a great match. I think they could really go back and forth. I would limit interference in as many of these matches as possible, but in this one, I think it tells a story of Judgment Day getting involved after LA Knight does. LA Knight and Chris Jericho build a feud. Judgment Day then gets involved, even though maybe Dom was don't. And that sets Dom off. He wins. But going into Saturday, he's I don't want you there. Like, and I think we just start to see something click for Dom of he's starting to believe what his dad is saying and just doubting himself a little bit if he could do it on his own or not. So we set that up there, and we get ready for Saturday Survivor Series against Ray for Dom. So we've got those matches. So Dominic beats Chris Jericho. He advances. He'll face Carmelo Hayes. They're part of that Final Four. So we've got that. I'll tell you why I like that matchup a lot when we get to Survivor Series. But on Friday, we know Edge will be back. It's Edge and Rusev, and then it's Oba and Drew. I would have Edge open the show here again, just ride off the fact that you've got Edge there. I think Edge and Rusev get really put over by John, and I think you tell the story that you have this close the show, and you tell the story that this is the two favorites, like a guy, John Cena's greatest rival, perhaps, an Edge in their story, and the guy that John Cena has never really had a number for. I think you could tell in Rusev, and now that he's back, he's to prove that he's Cena's greatest rival. So they go back and forth. I would have Edge win this, but it just be awesome. And I think this, how we put Rusev over in this, is that it's Edge. Like, he's back and he's on a steamroll for this final course. And I think Rusev's story coming out of this tournament is he's still looking for that mark on history. And I think you could tell with some of his past storylines, a great promo on I Will Not Be Forgotten would be maybe his mantra coming out of this, of like, I can't just be the guy who gets close to things and he just goes wild after this tournament. So I like that. Edge advances. He should be part of the Final Four. Of course, if he's in this tournament. And then if that closes the show, you have this open and you just go wild. Drew and Oba. Oh, man, this match would be so good. This would be the match I'm most excited for in the whole tournament. They just would be so good in the ring. And I think these two are a great dynamic because they buy their own hype like nobody else. Like, they're just the greatest. I think this is brutal. You just have it go back and forth. And I think what gets Drew here, and I would have Oba win, is I think the difference between the two is, and you could tell this story, especially in comparison of Drew is looking to prove something that I think you could tell he's not sure about, which is that he's the best. I think Oba, why would he doubt it? I think the difference is Oba's trying to tell everybody something he already knows, which is he's the best, and he's using this tournament to do that. So I think you have a moment of self-doubt, just hesitation, where Drew is just shocked by how much Oba can take. That hesitation costs him. Oba gets him. I really hope they would revisit this feud. This could be a great first feud for Oba. On he goes, Final Four against Edge. And that be your Final Four. We head into Survivor Series where John's got other stuff to do, but our Final Four that we would announce so that we know that it's Oba and Edge on next week's SmackDown, next week's Raw, is Dominic and Carmelo Hayes. That's our Final Four, and I love that Final Four because I think it's a good picture of what this tournament could set up, which is Edge is the heavy favorite, and he's holding off these three, hopefully, like, future superstars. And I think that's a cool story for Edge. He's coming from a different company, and I think you can tie that in. So it's like, that's a lot of pressure for somebody to beat him. And I think, I would have Carmelo and Oba be, I guess, slot baby faces here, and Dom's figuring his shit out. And he's got to wrestle Saturday too. But what I really, really like about this is it's two dudes in different ways, in Edge and Dominic, who I think have very clear ties to John. And Oba and Carmelo are the sign of the other thing that he wanted to push, which is who's next and who are the faces of tomorrow I maybe wouldn't get to face. Like, who's the next John Cena? And I think Carmelo and Oba have different claims to that, different ideas of what that means. I think that's a cool Final Four. And maybe not the most expected one, but that'd be who I have. So then we get to Survivor Series. I think I would have all four guys front row to watch Cena Brock. And I think the story of this match would be just the corniest never give up match ever. But I'd have the takeaway be like, Cena has to himself maybe righted some wrongs in this last year. There's always one more thing. This is like one big triumphant moment. And what I really want the setup to this be is like this last match should be taking down Cena at his strongest. One of the bummers of his title run not going the way that maybe people wanted to is now he doesn't have that belt heading into his final match. So how do you make him seem on top of the world? I think this is a closer way to do it. Have him and Brock just go at it. He beats Brock. And that is also like, I think the final cut of this show is Cena and Brock in my book, or maybe the final look of this match, if you do the War Games after, which of course you should, is Cena looks around the ring at the four guys, and I think either with just a look or with words, clearly lays down the gauntlet of that is what you got to do to beat me. Like, and I think the announce team can make a really good thing of like, the only thing, what these four guys now know is how far John is willing to go, how much this means to him, and how seriously he's taking this final run. The only thing they don't know is what it'll take to beat him. And I think we set that up of, if you're still in this, you're going through hell. And I would also tell that story because before that match, I would have Dominic versus Ray, and I would have Dominic not allow help. I've just decided how I'd like to do this. It's Dom versus Ray for the AAA championship. I would have Ray win. That's super cool. I don't think this should be Ray's retirement match, because don't have Ray retire during Cena's retirement run. Like, I've seen that with a couple things, AJ too. Like, hey, like, we can retire at different times. I get that, like, we are close. Ray's older than John, but like, don't do it now. Like, maybe WrestleMania, but I'd wait if we can. AJ's is next year, so it's like, let's space all these dudes out, right? Give them their moment. But I would have Ray win. He could do some awesome stuff in AAA, and you tell the story that Dom couldn't win on his own here. And maybe there's a moment where he almost gets help and he tells him, I wouldn't have him run out at all in this one. I would have Dom just lose. And there's that doubt of like what he would need to help win. And that doubt is just there. Heading into his match with Carmelo on Monday. And I think Dom, more than maybe any of the other four, as we cut around the ring, as Cena is giving that final challenge to them, to that final four, Dom has the clearest route in front of him of what would he have to overcome to achieve it. And I think we're building something there for all four guys, but I think Dom's path is the most complex. So that's why I'm giving it more time. Now we get to Raw, and here every of these matches has an interview in front of it. Interview for Carmelo, an interview for Dom. I would have the story of this match be that, yes, they are both superstar. I would tell the story that these are two future WrestleMania main eventers, and Dominic Mysterio and Carmelo Hayes. I think different paths. I think the story for Carmelo is like, this tournament has been proving people wrong and proving that he deserves this, and making sure that people remember Carmelo Hayes is him. And Dom doesn't have to do that because of his last name. And that's a shot. It's a pop shot that I feel like Dom's going to get his whole career. But as much as he, and I think this is a sick line from Carmelo, as much as he doesn't want to be Ray's son and keep saying that, sure has never changed his last name, has he? And that is because he wants it. He wants that push. He wants that back off of it. Even when Dom says he doesn't want help, he needs it. And that ties into what happened with Dom Saturday. I think you show Dom in a really dark place and kind of having to overcome that against Carmelo. And I think you would hear Carmelo's interview, and I think Finn would ask him, are you telling us to not help tonight? And I think he ignores him for a second, focuses on Carmelo, and tells himself all the things he wants to be true, which is that he is the greatest luchador of all time, that he's better than any luchador, including Rey Mysterio, and that he doesn't need help. And then he looks at Finn and goes, I don't know if that's true. And by the end of this tournament, I'll know. And I think, by now we've have a good idea why everyone's in this tournament. I think for Dom, it's about proving a lot of things. I think this would be the first tie-in I'd have specifically. And I think he could tie in, like, I've watched John Cena my whole life. Like, I was in locker rooms, I was there, and yes, that gave me a leg up, Carmelo, and maybe I did need that help. But you're gonna see that that's not the only reason I'm here. And we start to tie that in of like, there's something he's got to prove. And again, here's where the Eddie ties come in. Like, Eddie did lie, cheat, and steal. He did need to like cut corners, but that doesn't mean he didn't deserve the things. Everyone still wanted those good things for him because that's part of working hard, is being smart, cutting corners where you can. So, taking the same advantages that get you what you need. So I think that's cool. I think that's where we're going with Dom. So Dom and Carmelo, you do a promo package just like that for Edge and Oba on this show. I'll talk about that match in a second, but I would have that basically built here. So when we get to Friday, it doesn't have to be a rewash of this where you do the same interview segments, you do the promo ahead of time, and then that night, I think you give Edge a promo that Oba just comes, interrupts, and a brawl ensues, and then we get to the match later in the night. So that's that. But for this match, I would have Dom eventually win. I think folks can probably see where I'm going this, but I would have Dom win in this. After losing during this run, I think it gives him like a thing to rebuild. And I know Carmelo is a babyface at this point. I think we cheapen that a little bit by I would have Judgment Day run out and help Dom win, but when he doesn't see it. And so he thinks he does it. Carmelo still gets screwed. He has a thing to point back to, and he's right. And I think there'd be a cool feud coming out of this for Carmelo and Dom. He was right about Dom, but Dom still got the win. Dom doesn't necessarily know, and he's got to reckon with that afterwards because that is the build. So we know that it's going to be Dom in the final. Who's he going to face? Will it be Edge or Oba? Anyone versus Edge in this spot is going to feel like they're for sure going to lose. So I don't necessarily feel bad that when we get to, sorry, I forgot the transition there. So that was Raw. I'm heading to that SmackDown for our semifinal. I don't necessarily feel bad at Oba. It'll feel inevitable that it's going to be Edge, especially against Dominic, because the Mysterio Edge stories is there. Even Dominic and Edge had overlap. So I think that's so good that it's like, yeah, it'll be obvious. But Oba, I just believe in him so much, as is apparent in this video. So I won't spend too much here besides just saying that at this point, it should be evident that AEW shouldn't have to worry about WWE putting Edge over in a certain way. I think having Oba lose to him is a big deal. But WWE sell that. Like, I think you get Oba and Drew coming out of this. I think Oba losing to Edge, you could almost tell the story of Edge surviving that. And Oba, it's just not yet his time, but it's certainly coming. So I think that's a cool story. Maybe not the most compelling story complex because these two guys are just so opposite ends. But I think that's a fun story of itself, of like maybe tie that back into Cena and be like, this tournament gave us this dream match. And what a John Cena thing to do to like make that happen by giving a spot. And I think you have to in this tournament, I would think a thing John Cena is trying to correct is perhaps the biggest criticism of his career, which is that he never put people over. And I know Oba will beat a lot of people. I know ultimately he won't win, but he will, get a shot against a guy who's not even in the company in my version of this against Edge. And I think John Cena creating those opportunities is a cool way to end a legacy of someone who off screen is clearly a good dude. So what a cool way to end. So we get to the final. I don't want to skip around this anymore. We get to the final on Raw. It's Edge and Dom. I would have them open the show with a promo in the ring together. And I think I would have the promo start by talking about Cena and why they each need the win. And I would do it in reverse. I think this would be cool. I think Dom starts talking about Edge and like he hasn't called since he come back and like kind of taking that out in different things and almost preempting. He's so like self-conscious about the things Edge is going to say that he's like trying to cut them off. So he's, a little 8 Mile action of like, you're going to say that's like, I, I I helped kick you out of WWE, and I kicked you out of the Judgment Day and replaced you, and now I'm sucking up that spot and I don't deserve it. And that's all the things you're going to say. And I think I'd take his clear focus on Edge, have that transferred with Edge being like, this tournament isn't about you. It's about John Cena. And Edge can finally talk through all the things he's given up to come back and why this is so big. Edge being in this tournament, if it is possible, makes, I don't want them to skip the story. It's so hard to, how much is he going to talk about AEW? But if he can even hint at it, what an emphasis it puts to be like, I am not working at my current place of employment because I couldn't not be a part of this. Why are you here, Dom? Like, why does it matter? And I think finally, maybe everyone else, we really know why they're here. And finally, Edge, of course, will know Dom better than anybody. And he's like, I was in those locker rooms with you too as a kid, and all these pieces and different things. And I'm the only one here who knows you. And Dom finally cracks, and he's like, I don't want to be remembered just as Ray's kid or just tied to this or tied to that. Like, who I am and the reason I'm so confident in myself, even when people like you aren't, Edge. And I think he can still keep that, lack of sorry about the pun, edge, that heelish edge, while obviously turning baby faces in some ways in this tournament, is I think Dom's story of why it should be him and Cena is like, he is the star that Cena's WWE built. I came up, I watched it, I did all the things. Ray would tell him to be like John, I think you could say. And it's like, that's the star they want me to be. And I don't know if I'm that yet, but F you, if he wants to say it, he can, if you think I can't. And he almost ends where Edge would have a comeback, focus on Dom. Dom ends focused on Cena and tell that story of like, now he's locked in. And I think now we're ready. Like, all of the insecurities gone. And I think we have a moment there where he tells Judgment Day confidently, don't get involved. And I would have the final match finale that night. Dom wins, no interference. I think you could have a lie cheat steal moment where he almost pretends like there's going to be interference, because that's still a way to do it, and different things, and like a lot of near falls. I would have Edge lose. I would do that for some logistical and dream reasons. I think company-wise it makes sense, because, well, I don't know, if you're going to have Edge in it, at least having the final and lose to Cena, maybe that is the most diplomatic thing to do. But for WWE's sake, it's two WWE guys in the final. Edge makes as far as you can without that, without facing John himself. This is the main thing. I think it's, you can't put, if it's not a superstar of tomorrow, it's like, who do we want this tournament to most put over? I don't want that to be Edge. I don't think WWE wants that to be Edge. Even if he was in WWE, I wouldn't want it to be Edge, right? Like, or Adam Copeland, whatever you call him now. Like, he's in the same generation. We should put over someone younger. I think they gotta make a star out of this. I think there's a bunch of options. I've gone with Dom. I think Edge coming back also would want to. I've picked someone in Dom I think he'd be willing to do that for and advocate to do that for. So we get Dom and John on that last SmackDown. And I think on this one, like I said, I would not have it announced that John is here. I would have Dom come out, celebrate the tournament win. And I think in it, almost a little bit of false triumph of like, yes, I've won it. And maybe a moment where he's like, I did it by beating Edge. I've done the whole thing. And Judgment Day celebrates with him. And now I'm going to beat John Cena. And then John's music hits. And I think the emotion of an unannounced John Cena appearance would be so big. I think John could really sell. This is how much I want it. I'm not being paid for this appearance. I've come to an unpaid appearance so I could see you, Dom, make this match official and say bye one last time. Because after that match, I'm leaving. And I'm going through the crowd and with my people when I'm gone. And you'll have to live with what happens next, Dom. And I think the story heading into the match will be about legacy. And he's like, this tournament has been about what everyone always thought I had so much control over my run in WWE. Well, now I do. And I've decided that I guess it's you, Dom, who will face it. Do you think you're worthy of it? And I think that moment of John Cena almost believes in Dom more than he does. And we clearly build it's face Dom versus face Cena. And people will cheer for Dom like crazy, and they should, and he should still do heel things like Eddie, like that template works for a reason. Dom has a legit and like feel good reason to emulate Eddie, and I think that's awesome. So run with that. And I think Dom's final pull is John should know that you helped make me, but you've made me better than you. And when we leave, no one, and I think this is the big thing you have to set in motion, is like no one will doubt that I deserve to win this. And I think that's the big thing. It's not about winning. It's about what people think about him winning. And that's still eating at him a little bit. So then we get into the last match at Saturday night's main event. Thank you so much. If you liked the video so far, please please subscribe. Please give more ideas. If you have other things you'd like to see in this, your comments mean a lot. We're shooting for our next subscriber goal of 20,000 before Royal Rumble. I'll do a fantasy booking video for the Royal Rumble. That's it. We're here. It's John Cena. It's Dominic Mysterio. I think this is a cool moment of like as many childhood photos of Dom as you can squeeze in here versus childhood photos of John. That to me is like these. When I think of John Cena and what his WWE legacy is, I think Dom has the best chance to be that. Of like, I remember getting DVDs of John Cena and be like, there's this kid with a belt at his dad's house and like being the next person. And Dom got to do that there. I think there's obviously the fun connection they can make of like John had to like work into it. Dom was born into it, but still like, if this is John's legacy, well, that legacy allowed guys like Dom to dream about it and to be in it. And like Ray was gone for stretches of that run, and the WWE that was there that Dom worked for 18 years to get to be a part of was there because of John. And they build that. There's this big moment. I just think Dom is as full a picture of like, if I have to pick someone, then I'm like, I know he's part of WWE's plan for 40 years. It's Dom Mysterio. So I think there's a cool way there. We do the match. And I think do the tributes. Have Dom do as many luchador tributes as he can. John does a tribute for each person who was in the tournament. Everyone gets a tribute. You get a tribute. I get a tribute. They show this clip on screen so that John knows that he cares. Like, let's do it all. And I think we build up. And this is the part I like. I'm going to tell you the part I'm not sure you'll love first. I didn't even mention. I would have Dom put the Intercontinental title on the line. It's the one title John hasn't held, so that's another fun thing to throw in this match in case it needed one more thing. Is it also makes it more unpredictable of like it's not just John's last match, it's will John get the last title he needs, which is awesome. And I think you don't bring it up till now, so it's not too obvious who's going to win it. And I think I think I have I'm thinking of who wins. And it can be different either way. I certainly don't think it's wrong, obviously, to have Dom just win. For this fantasy booking, I'm having him lose. And it's because I have a good way for him to lose that I think is really storyline good. John will hate it. I think John gets all the titles, and we just cement what he's been going for in this last run, which is greatest of all time. He's got them all. I think that's cool. I think people in the company want that for him. I don't think fans will begrudge that. And I think I have a way to still get Dom over with the next thing, which is if that's Dom's storyline, he gets here, he beats Cena, well, then he should win freaking everything, right? I think if you have him lose, it puts just a small enough pause button on it that he can hit WrestleMania season full bore and just go after this. And how I would have him lose is, I swear to God, I would have it copy and paste Money in the Bank 2011. The ultimate like callback and what they're going for here, which is you've set it up now, which is Dom's got him. I would have him hit the 619 big splash, just like how John had to stop in 2011 because the only thing he wouldn't allow is outside interference. Dom finally puts his foot down, stops Judgment Day from coming in, because even though it's gotten to the point where they're like, and just like with John, people will argue afterwards, how dumb can you be? But that's the path that Dom is going off of. And even in the final moments, he's emulating John. Now, I would have that happen no matter what. I think you could tell a fun story of like John almost sees that. And because it's John Cena, he doesn't take advantage of it. Like he resets and that's what costs him. But I would have it be just like Money in the Bank. Dom rolls back in instead of a go to sleep. It's a attitude adjustment. Well, that'd be the greatest 2 count of all time. But I would have it be the pin. And I'd have John win on the Money in the Bank finish. He has the Intercontinental title, blows a kiss, into the crowd he goes, emulates, even though it was a loss, probably his most celebrated match, one of his most celebrated moments. If we're not going to get a goodbye promo after this, which I think we still could, I think John Cena takes the belt into the crowd. He vacates it the next night, and then you start a journey for that next Intercontinental champion. I think that's cool. And just imagine him emulating that and going in. I mean, that's awesome, right? So I found something I really like, so that's how I'm going to sell it there. And that would be the tournament. Coming off of it, I think Dom's the man. I think he's got to wrestle with that. I would have Judgment Day turn on him immediately, finally. Like he screwed him over. Like he should have won the thing. He didn't want their help, whatever. Well, he's out. I would take him out of action until like Royal Rumble. In the meantime, I think I'd have Carmelo Hayes go for that Intercontinental title, immediately get him over. I don't care about brands, by the way, so he's here now. He's going for the Intercontinental title. When Dom comes back and dealt with the Judgment Day, Dom can face off against him, and they have storyline from this tournament. But I would have Dom set up to be like, I think Dom and Oba and Carmelo should feel like main eventers at the very least after this. And so I think having that build from this, Edge would leave, obviously. So I think Edge in this little run gets to go against a more fully formed Dom. He doesn't get a final match against Cena. I did think of a way, if Edge isn't going to be in this match, I think it'd be cool if he was on the 11-17 Raw and just did that there. But I think if Edge isn't in the tournament and just shows up and faces John randomly, that undercuts the tournament. I'm not complaining because we still get the tournament when we get an Edge match. So I'll leave that for you to decide. But I would have it stick to the tournament. Just do that. John Cena's got 2 matches left. It's the Survivor Series match, and it's the Saturday Night Main Event. And that's my video, my very long video. I hope that explains why I would do it. And I hope you enjoyed watching. Again, I have some of these on the channel ways back now that you can go watch. But I'd like to keep doing them if folks are interested in. I just felt compelled to do this video. Hope you can see why. I obviously had a lot of thoughts. And WWE, if you give me Oba in this tournament, we're good. I don't know if he should win because I don't know why he would, but I mean, I do because he's cool. So, hey, you got 2 fantasy bookings in this. The one that I spent an hour and a half on, which is Dominic Mysterio wins for good storyline-driven reasons. And option 2, Oba wins because Oba Femi's cooler than your favorite wrestler. So, I hope that makes sense. If you want another video, I've already told you how to get involved. I really appreciate anyone who's watching this and just wish you the best. Have such a good day. Bye. Fuck yeah.